This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Welcome to News 9 and you are watching On Point. Today we have two On Points. The first On Point is about how India has stood up to bully Trump. The second On Point looks at Jeffrey Saks's legal troubles after his allegations against the EC. Now let's take a quick look at the headlines. India wins 5th test against England, level series in thrilling finish as Mohammad Siraj takes 5 wickets. How do you know China grabbed 2,000-kilometer land? Supreme Court asks Rahul Gandhi rebukes claims made by leader of the opposition. Shibu Soren, JMM founder and former Jharkhand CM, dies at 81 after prolonged illness. Victim's family firm demands new date of execution in Nimisha Priya case. Prime Minister Modi to inaugurate Bengaluru's Yellow Line Metro on August 10th. Congress MP Sudha robbed in Delhi's high security zone, slams Delhi government for lack of security. 11 killed in monsoon fury in Uttar Pradesh. Ganga flows above danger mark in Varanasi, Prayagraj. Ukraine claims it destroyed 1 Russian jet fighter and damaged 4 other in military aircraft in Russian-occupied Crimea. Hamas says it will allow aid for hostages if Israel halts airstrikes, opens permanent humanitarian corridors. US President Donald Trump has weaponized tariff as a tool for geopolitics. After targeting India on its alleged high tariffs, Trump is threatening penalties on New Delhi for pursuing friendly relationship with Russia, Iran, and BRICS countries. In the face of Trump's tariff tactics, India has stood up to his bullying. Prime Minister Modi has spoken that Indian interests will be protected, that is in tune with a time-tested policy of strategic autonomy in international relations. New Delhi stands firm against Trump's bullying. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff and key Trump advisor Miller accused India of continuing to fund the war with Ukraine by buying oil from Russia. This flies in face of Trump's flip-flop on Putin and Russia.
What he said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products.
Trump is threatening an additional penalty on India for its oil purchase from Russia over the steep 25% already announced, but it also exposes the American president's doublespeak. Trump is targeting India on its trade surplus and threatening to penalize our trade ties with Russia. Trump hasn't slapped similar penalties on China for continuing to buy Russian oil. Despite a larger exposure to US markets, Trump refuses to target China. China is threatening to leverage its rare earth minerals against the United States. Historically, India has always been regarded with respect for its courage to stand up for its convictions against global superpowers that tried to bully New Delhi. And more so, the American president has not addressed the issue of East Europe buying oil from the Russians. In 1968, India refused to sign nuclear non-proliferation treaty despite US and Soviet pressure. In 1995, we refused to adhere to blatantly discriminatory Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. In climate change negotiation, we held our ground that the Rio Convention provisions must be upheld. After the Ukraine war began, India continued to procure Russian crude despite global pressure. So the question is, how can India beat Trump's tariff tactic? India must diversify exports to other countries. Explore alternative markets in Asia, Africa and Europe. Protect strategic sectors like GM crops and remanufactured goods. Consider retaliatory tariffs on select American goods. Challenge Trump's tariffs at WTO. Strengthen domestic industry with Make in India. Implement the UK FTA and fast-track talks with EU. Strengthen ties with alliances like BRICS, ASEAN and EU nation. Continue to negotiate hard with United States of America on trade. No compromise on agriculture, dairy and MSMEs. Now, in an interview, renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs has said it is highly unlikely that India will get a trade deal with the United States and that India must keep its door open to negotiations with China, Russia and Europe. So what does he say? I will be surprised if India pulled off an agreement with US. US just wants to use India against China. It has no interest in India's goodwill per se. India is set to become a very successful economy. Trump won't open the doors for Indian manufacturing. Trump says low-cost industry should not destroy American industry. Trump will never make India a replacement for China. Trump does not want India's supply chain. India must not close its doors to China, Russia and Europe. Now, New Delhi remains committed to a multipolar world. That's another aspect. Non-alignment was one of India's principal policies. One of the first principles of Indian foreign policy. Now redefined as strategic autonomy. However, New Delhi's firm stand against American unipolarity is making Washington anxious. That explains Trump's statements against groupings like BRICS. So how can New Delhi renegotiate this without hurting our national interest? Addressing a rally in Uttar Pradesh, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said countries around the world were focusing only on their interest.
आज दुनिया की अर्थव्यवस्था कई आशंकाओं से गुजर रही है। अस्थिरता का माहौल है। ऐसे में दुनिया के देश अपने अपने हितों पर फोकस कर रहे हैं। अपने अपने देश के हितों पर ध्यान केंद्रित कर रहे हैं। भारत भी दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बनने जा रहा है। इसलिए भारत को भी अपने आर्थिक हितों को लेकर सजग रहना ही है।
India and United States are negotiating to finalize a trade deal by end of August. India will ensure that it stands its ground and protects its interest. Now the big questions are, does short-term pain for long-term gain be the mantra? On this issue, let me introduce my guests. Ambassador Jen Dasgupta, former Ambassador to World Trade Organization, Dr. Rajan Kumar, Professor, Center for International Studies, JNU, and Ajit Kumar Jha, Senior Journalist and Psephologist. Ambassador Dasgupta, my question to you is, does short-term pain for long-term gain be the new mantra, sir?
I don't think India will agree to a treaty or an agreement with the US only for short-term gains. Because as we have seen in the case of the first Trump administration, the tariffs which the administration imposed were not rolled back by the Biden administration subsequently. So whatever India concedes now, if it is not in its interest, it is likely to continue beyond the Trump regime, which is scheduled to end in January 2029. So, whatever India now agrees to will have a long-term impact. And that is the view that I think the Indian government will hold while negotiating the treaty with the US. The second point that I wanted to mention is that the US has been very vociferous in its demands. It wants this, it wants that, etc., etc. But it has not mentioned at any juncture what it is prepared to give to India. And that is what I think I would like to draw the attention of the audience to this point, that India has repeatedly said that it wants a balanced and fair agreement, and it should be mutually beneficial. By mutually beneficial, it means that if India concedes certain tariff concessions to the US must also reduce its tariffs below the pre-Trump levels, which is December 2024 levels, to accord extra market access to Indian products of Indian interest.
So, Professor,
Yes.
is there an opportunity in this crisis?
I don't really think so. Opportunity, I'll come to that. But the first point is that the most important thing, India should wait and watch, and wait and watch in the sense that India should try to negotiate first. The American delegates are coming next month. We don't have to be, we should not be retaliating immediately at this point of time. But yes, India has to be firm so far as national interests are concerned. And when I use the word national interests, I refer to India's defense interest with Russia, geopolitical collaboration with Russia. So on the issue of energy, probably India can diversify. Let me tell you that there is a possibility, and the difference of price between the Ural oil, which is Ural crude oil, which is coming from Russia, and the Brent, which is the other pricing mechanism. So it's not much, and India is getting just $1 to $2 per barrel. That's the net gain that India is having, and annual benefit is roughly, according to some estimates, it approximately $2 billion. So it's possible that India can diversify energy. It can start importing from other places, but Trump is not stopping that, and that's the reason, Shamson, former Secretary of India, he wrote a very strong article where he is asking India to stand up, and I kind of agree to that India has to stand up, and India should not get bullied, because Trump respects, strong men. Let me tell you, Trump respects the countries which have pursued a very strong policy, which have, in a way, if I can use the term, retaliated against United States, be it China, be it Brazil, to an extent South Africa, even other countries also, which have stood firm. But if you compromise at this point of time, and if you say, for instance, that I'll not import energy and I'll import less defense products from Russia, so that would be a disastrous policy for India. So India has to convey at some point that there are some red lines which cannot be beyond which we cannot negotiate, and defense is one red line that India has to say it very clearly. That is impossible to switch from one platform to other platform. It takes a lot of time, and given the fact that US is not willing to share technology, so India should not go for some defense purchase.
Actually, I need to clarify. What I meant was that saying no to America will be pain in short term but gain in long term. I think it was perceived as otherwise. That's what I meant. If you say no to America right now, might pain us in short term, but we will gain in long term.
Just if you give me just 1 minute, yeah. So coming to that point, short term, I think India should be willing to take the short term pain for the sake of long term, because India has to stand firm at some point of time, because Trump is dictating the policy that how we should have the relationship with Russia. Russia has been a very close historic partner of India, and because of geopolitical interest, because of defense interest, we have to say no to United States at some point of time, and we cannot allow United States to dictate policy on BRICS also. That we have with the BRICS, we have a good relation with all the important parts of the global South, and we cannot be dictated by US. So India India has to convey very strongly at some point of time that these trade is negotiable, and I agree that India should negotiate on the issue of trade, but on the issue of defense and national security, India has to stand firm.
Ajit, why has Russia become such an issue? Earlier it looked as if Trump is in love with Vladimir Putin in the first term. When he was not the president, he was in full praise of Vladimir Putin. And suddenly the Russian war economy has become such a big issue that he is willing to strain ties with India.
Well, I think the main reason, Karthike, is that Trump assumed, in fact, remember his statement that the moment I become president, within one day, I'll end the Ukraine-Russia war. And Russia clearly refused. He did not understand Russia's national sovereignty, Russia's core interest, national interest on why it is engaging in this war. And second, the world assumed that President Trump is basically, just hung up on trade and trade tariffs and sort of immigration. But what happened while he was negotiating with the Europeans and telling the Europeans to spend more on defense, somehow they persuaded him to play a bigger role in trying to end this Ukraine-Russia war. I mean, they kind of told him, you're the leader of NATO. And therefore, he has become so tough on the issue of Russia. But you see, most important point is what India should do, I feel, is analytically distinguish between its trade interests and its geopolitical interests, defense interests, its core national interests. And it should negotiate on the trade deal. In fact, I think sometimes many of us in India, we have taken this 25% imposition of tariff as a in finality. I don't think it is in finality. In fact, I feel President Trump loves grabbing headlines. So every day you'll see a new headline that President Trump will throw. Suddenly 50% on Brazil, 35% on Canada, whatever, different. And then that keeps changing every day so that he remains in news. So I think we should take the 25% as a point of negotiation. We have till September. In fact, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has done 8 rounds. We can go around negotiating. Also remember that at the end of the year, we have a Quad meeting in India. So we should ensure that President Trump comes to India. And at the same time, we should not negotiate on what we consider as our national interest. The fact that we have strong links with Russia, the fact that we have strong links with the BRICS countries, the fact that we have all kinds of issues. For example, we don't want to negotiate on agriculture and things of that sort.
But there's one larger issue. Ajit, there's one larger issue, and Ambassador Dasgupta, I want you in here on this. Why is it correct to say that there's an emerging consensus in Washington which opposes multipolarity? Because sometimes the views can persist and the presidents can come and go. And why is it becoming an issue that Indian foreign policy is being seen purely from the prism of American transactionalism, Earlier administration knew it, but they kept a safe distance, at least in public narrative. But this time all the lines are being broken.
It is indeed a very unfortunate development that the extreme views of a majority of the MAGA supporters, which form the largest base for President Trump, they view this transactional approach as being the right one, and they are all in favor of it. So I think what has happened is that President Trump has lost sight of the fact that India is a strategic partner of the US. India is part of the Quad, which is a very important grouping of countries, 4 countries. And as Mr. Ajit Jha mentioned, the meeting of the heads of state is to take place in India by the end of this year. So all these things have been, I think, brushed aside in his single-minded pursuit of not only tariffs, but to bring India to kneel before the US, and so that he can claim victory that he has got the Europeans, the Japanese, Brazilians, the Koreans, everybody to agree to his kind of tariff increases. Not the Brazilians, of course, they have not agreed. But what we are forgetting is that he has not adopted the same approach towards China. There is no mention of stopping China from importing Russian oil or of Turkey stopping the imports of Russian oil. So he is playing, I think, pick and choose. And he has this feeling, perhaps, that India can be pushed around and he can get his way with India. And then he can claim to the world that he has made India, which is maintaining the highest tariffs, to bring down its tariffs to zero or near zero level. And it's all because of him.
Okay.
Whether he gains as a result or not, in substantive terms, is another thing. He's not bothered about the results.
So, Dr. Rajan, is there a real threat of sort of a Kissinger-like deal which happened in 70s, which Trump can do with either Russian or Chinese?
Well, I don't think, that is that kind of situation emerging at this point of time. Kissinger's diplomacy, ping-pong diplomacy, where Pakistan played a very important role and US and China came together. But I think the geopolitics has changed completely. Initially, it appeared probably that US was trying to kind of create a rift between Russia and China and trying to bring Russia to his side. That was speculated and written very widely in many of the initial US media, etc., because he was trying to appease President Putin for some time. But I think I don't think Trump is thinking a long-term policy. Whatever policies he is implementing at this moment, that will lead to the decline of US influence in the long run. So the US is US is trying to revive its economy. US is trying to earn more through tariff. US is trying to reindustrialize, especially in the core belt. That is all in the US interest for the time being. But what US is losing the institutions that it created, be it WTO, be it IMF, World Bank, etc., climate change, etc. It is losing, and if US loses its influence on those institutions, the overall influence of US will decline. And as you rightly pointed out in your earlier question, that the world is already multipolar in different ways. If you see in terms of PPP, India's contribution, India is already third largest economy, and the number of countries which are not willing to listen to US. Russia, in fact, would not have attacked 20 years earlier. So the fact that Russia attacked Ukraine, that is because Russia thinks that US will not send its army. So we are moving towards multipolarity, and we have to kind of play a very important role in that pole. India is an important pole without any doubt in terms of economy, military, and global influence, also rising global influence. So we have to play to our strength, and we should not succumb to US pressures. And that's the only way to deal with the United States, let me tell you.
Okay, Ajit, the relationship is more complex, despite the fact that there is a face-off between India and the bully Trump. We still have deep relationship with the United States of America. There's a deep tech relationship. Do you think that the other facets where India is deeply entwined with, America as a country can be affected?
I don't think so. First of all, President Trump is only there for 3.5 years, number one. Number
That's
two,
the only good part.
No, there's another good part. He's going to face the Senate elections next year. And that might turn the tables completely. Most observers of US elections sort of assume that the Republicans won't do very well given the uncertainty in in Mr. Trump's approach. And number three, we have a very, very long-term cultural relations. We have almost about a crore diaspora in that country. We have important Indians are holding positions there all over. We've had a very, very historic relation in the last 20 years, a total turnaround. In fact, I think India is being considered, there's a lot of criticism that the Quad is actually a Asian NATO. And a lot of people who are critical of the Quad point out that India is a member of NATO from that perspective. So we are a very important player. Look, I always, my argument is that India should keep negotiating, not give up on the Trump tariffs, and ensure that other factors, geopolitical, defense, and others don't change. And I don't think Trump, he threatens, but I don't think Trump's threat is actually what he's going to implement. Even in terms of trade, half the time when you talk about certain numbers, by the time they are implemented, the entire procedure changes, the methodology of it, its impact. So I think we should not be paranoid and we should keep sort of bargaining. Maybe we should learn a lesson from China. Look at China.
I think, Ajit, the bottom line is, I think it's a bit of a rude shock for Trump. The way countries from Vietnam to others have notowed and surrendered to Trump, even European partners, and plus the Bolsonaro tax which the Brazil is facing. I think India has done pretty well, and we are not even in 1960s and 70s when we could, and that's why I made the graphic, when we could say no to NPT, and when we could say no to Americans in 1968, I think a lot of water has flown under the bridge. We can say no to Donald Trump anytime now. Thank you all of you gentlemen for joining me, because I thought this program is important to say that India has stood tall, India stands strong, and India says no to the United States of America on its trade tariff pulling. So this was on point one. In the second on point, we look at how RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav is under a scandal for possessing 2 voter IDs after a short break.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
खूबसूरत सी तुम कोई चिंता करो, पीछे भरोसा